Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Home Video Library. I'm your host Nathan P. Butler. I am the author, of course, of a saga on home video, the second edition of which is up on Amazon in Kindle, the nice sort of color version for Kindle, plus a premium hardback version and a paperback version, all in color. And I mention that because one of the things that I don't mention probably enough on the show here when talking about anything related to the book is that while it is a fan's guide to U.S. Star Wars home video releases, there's a ton of sidebars on non-U.S. stuff to compare to the U.S. And all the stuff we're about to see in this episode is kind of a screener version of stuff where the regular version, the retail version, actually does show up in a Saga on Home Video second edition. In this case, volume 3, because one of the items we're going to look at is Ewoks. That's in here. One of the items we're going to look at, or three of the items I guess we're going to look at here, is a set of basically behind-the-scenes stuff that also appears in here. Volume 3 is the non-theatrical live-action movie stuff. So if you want anything from basically prior to the Disney releases beginning with The Force Awakens, that's Volume 1. Anything with the live-action films then going into that latter era is Volume 2, and the non-live-action theatrical film stuff is all Volume 3. But all of these are covered because I have regular versions of all the stuff we're going to look at here. But just recently, I was able to acquire some things that are pretty rare to my experience. Kind of interesting little items here that all come from Sarah Baker Saunders by way of David Dumbbell. Sarah Baker Saunders is someone who used to work at a video store and had access to the cassettes we're about to look at, and then she was selling them within the UK. David Dumbbell, being a friend of the show, is someone who is over in the UK as well, so we're able to kind of manage it so that she would sell them to me, send them to him, and then he sent them over to me here in the US. So what we're talking about here is screener type things. We've talked about before how there are different styles of screeners. There are some screeners that are like unfinished versions of stuff that are sent out early to reviewers. We've seen stuff where screeners are sent out to groups that handle awards like the Emmys or the Oscars to try to get some attention and get some consideration, hence for your consideration, for those items, for nominations, for possible wins, and that sort of thing. There's also screener type things that are sent out to video stores back in the day when video stores were kind of a singular thing as opposed to just being part of other stores. That was happening too, but we're talking like Blockbusters, Hollywood Videos, stuff like that. Back then, sometimes you would see a video, usually in the form of a VHS cassette given the era, actually sent to a store to try to convince them to please, please, please carry this item in your store for rental or for sale. And those can take different forms. We've seen some somewhat elaborate ones, like the ones for the Ewok telemovies from the US. We've also seen promotional things like trailer loops that are on promotional videos to play in a video store and just keep playing and playing. That just plays the same trailer over and over again to draw attention. So a lot of different ways that things could have been provided to video stores to try to draw attention or at least get them to carry a product. And that was the case in the UK also. And what we see in this case is four different items, about to say four different items, a group of 3 and a group of 1, that theoretically could have been 2 separate episodes, but why take the time to do that? Let's just do it here as one. That all kind of follow a similar pattern when it comes to a promotional video sent to a video store in the UK to get them to carry a product. So we're going to start with the one that is not like the others. We have looked before quite a bit at releases of Ewoks: The Battle for Endor from different regions, mainly the US, but also in the UK. And we saw, from 1988, this one back in the day. Right? We saw this in a previous episode where the cassette itself, remember this is the one that has the reversible cover, so if you see this cover on it, it's just that somebody's taken it and flipped it. That's fine. I have it on this cover because it matches the covers of the subsequent reissues. But that's what our label looked like with no label here. That's what the label looked like here for the retail release in '88 of Battle for Endor. There's a couple things for us to look at here in relation to what a video store might have received, though, because while this is the retail version, this is a screener copy of the same sent to video stores. And you'll notice this one is in a case that actually is branded MGM UA. I'm not sure if that would have originally been the case for this one and it just had the case switched, or if this was just something that the screener had. But we have essentially the same cover art, although notice up here there's a blank space on the spine whereas it has one of those little things here on the retail release, but otherwise they are essentially the same. Inside this one, though, when you pop it open, and it is, again, it's an MGM UA case, so MGM UA home video there underneath. This is the cassette inside. Little sticker type thing there. But then here it says, Advanced Copy Ewoks Client MGM, run number 1814, program time, that is the running time, 93 minutes 2 seconds, stereo. Now, what is on this compared to, say, the retail version? Basically, for any retail version, you'll typically see, like, company logos and stuff at the beginning of the cassette, and then a copyright warning type of thing on the cassette. It might even show a separate screen specifically about the rating and that kind of thing. All of that kind of stuff sort of preceding the actual start of the program, the actual start of whatever the film or other content is. And the content runs as it would have aired essentially on television without commercials, where it's just kind of the regular image as you're watching it. These screeners, and this will be the case for all of these we're going to look at here, lack any type of like company logo stuff at the beginning. They just basically jump straight into the program. And interestingly, all of these, even though some are going to be from CBS Fox and others are going to be from MGM UA, MGM United Artists, they follow a similar pattern in that they all have the running time. A little box at the top, black background, white numbers, keeping track of the constant running time as you're watching the program. So it's not an unblemished version of the film to watch, but unlike a lot of times where you see that kind of time code running on a screener, it's not an unfinished copy. This is the special as it aired on television, again without commercials, as it would have aired in theaters in other regions, for example. I think the UK was one of them. But it's just a finished version with the time code running at the top, just so you could follow along with where it is and gives you a good sense of how long it is. And I guess for that purpose, it helps to distinguish it from retail copies so it can't be resold as if it was a retail copy if someone were to, say, replace the label or something. But an interesting one. And along with that, apparently over there in the UK, there was a promotion if you were to pick up or be a store trying to promote this particular release. And that was a sticker set here, very fragile sticker set. Got to be very careful with it. It says, Ewoks: The Battle for Endor. The adventure begins on 9th December from MGM UA Home Video. Then every one of these around it says Ewoks: The Battle for Endor, MGM/UA Home Video, right? So we've got, what do we have? We've got Charl, who eventually was turned into a Night Sister, or retconned into being a Night Sister. We have King Tarak, the leader of the Sanyasin Marauders. We have Teak, which brings back fond memories for me, right, from my Chrono Radio days. If you remember Chrono Radio, that was the inspiration for, it's time for Teak's Ear News. It's short, it's to the point, and it's often warm and fuzzy. Yeah, big callback there to a show of my first podcast that ran from 2002 to 2007 there. Gosh, I'm old. We got another Marauder here, and then Wicket with Sendel Tuwani there. So, kind of cool there. She had this as well. So yeah, a screener, if a video store wanted to possibly consider selling or renting this in their stores back in '88. Remember, this predates the US releases because we did not get any VHS or Laserdisc home video releases at all of the Ewok films until 1990, when both of them came through MGM UA home video. For the UK, this was the one through MGM UA, but then Ewok Adventure / Caravan of Courage, that one came through CBS Fox Video. Different setup than it was in the United States. Then in the past, we also looked at the fact that in the UK, they had some different release timing and different release approaches to some of the behind-the-scenes specials from the original trilogy era. Remember, there were 4 big behind-the-scenes specials of that era. The Making of Star Wars, as told by C-3PO and R2-D2, which is sometimes just referred to as The Making of Star Wars. SPFX, The Empire Strikes Back. Classic Creatures: Return of the Jedi, and each of those was essentially film-specific to A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. Then there was sort of a catch-all program released after Jedi called From Star Wars to Jedi, The Making of a Saga. That is probably my single favorite behind-the-scenes thing of the era. It, of course, includes, among other things, my oft-quoted favorite lines like how Lucas says that a special effect without a story is a pretty boring thing, and, of course, Salacious Crumb's hello in TV land. So, particularly fond of that one. But in the UK, in 1990, all of those except SPFX The Empire Strikes Back got a VHS release in sort of a matching set for them. We've looked at them before. One thing I do want to point out with these is that I think I mentioned this in a subsequent episode, not in the original episode when I first covered them. These were being reissued over time, so you'll actually find the packaging from 1990. Sometimes in a different outer clamshell case, it's a little glossier looking for some of the later releases. But inside, you'll find the cassettes where the content is identical, but the labels will have different copyright dates on them based on when those labels were printed, some of which are in the era in which Fox Video was the name instead of using CBS Fox Video. So you'll see different dates from basically 1990 at least through 1994 on some of these. And we'll show you that here. So this was, of course, the making of Star Wars. Again, we saw that back in the day. I was seen it on the show before. Nothing on the interior as far as printing goes. This one, again, 1990 as the initial release. My copy of this one, copyright date there of 92. Notice the Fox Video here. So a new label with subsequent reprintings, same packaging from 1990. We then also had Classic Creatures Return of the Jedi. Notice this is in a little bit more glossy packaging. We will see that is because this was a later printing and reissue of the same thing. Again, the 1990 version of it, though. Notice here and here that it's the same image used for the VHS release in the United States of this, the initial VHS release and beta release, and that it's the whole Leia with Jabba and lots of dead space up at the top kind of release. In this case, this is another one marked as Fox Video with a copyright date of 94, one of the last printings of this set of sort of standalone, but thought of as sort of a matching set with the packaging versions of these. And then we have From Star Wars to Jedi, The Making of a Saga, with Wicket, R2-D2, and C-3PO here on the cover. Right, up here, same thing. Again, we've seen these before. It is not a huge shock to see any of these. This one is actually from that original release in 1990, so it does say CBS Fox here, and the copyright date is 1990. But again, all that changes is the branding and the date basically on the label. All of these, if you pop them in, will start with, it's got the copyright warning and stuff. It also has a CBS Fox Video all-time greats logo that appears, similar to some of the other VHS releases of the films that we've seen, despite the fact that by the time some of these were being reissued, reproduced and reissued, it was Fox Video rather than CBS Fox Video. But what Sarah had, and what David was able to sort of be the middleman to get for me here also, was a screener copy for video stores of all three of those. And it's interesting how they vary. First off, content-wise, same as what happened with the Battle for Endor here. No company stuff at the beginning, no like all-time great stuff, no copyright stuff, just straight into the program, and every single one along the top does have the time code running as you play it. So they're basically bare bones, time code bearing copies to use for review. And because these are all the same product line essentially here, all around the same time, we will find that their designs for these screener copies are effectively the same, but kind of interesting in a few ways. So here's the Making of Star Wars screener. Now it's the same type of cover here, same type of side, same back, except, and we've seen this I think once before, we have that red sort of stamp on there, what looks like a stamp, that says Promotion only. So you can tell that this is not meant for retail distribution, just to be used as a screener. You might also note that this is a little brighter. A lot of fading on my retail copies here. Okay. Inside, though, again, there's no printing on the inside or anything like that for any of these. Here is your cassette. Kind of neat that it's in kind of the later era as far as a lot of VHS stuff goes, but it does have one of those mismatched flap kind of things going on here. But there on the side, it identifies what this is. It says preview cassette, property of CBS Fox Video Limited, but they typically did not want them back. They assumed they would just be, thrown out or whatever. They didn't really give a crap once it was out in the wild because they just didn't care. Title, The Making of Star Wars, to be returned after viewing. Again, most of the time not bothering to track any of this stuff down or anything, so a lot of these will wind up on the secondary market, or unfortunately in many cases in like landfills somewhere. So we have this one. Notice here at least this does have a piece popped out. Sometimes you'll see screener or video store VHSs that don't have that popped out. But this one's pretty tame, right? It's got a different label on it as you would expect, right? And it's on the side as opposed to the top. That's kind of nifty and all. And it does have the promotion only thing on the back. But otherwise, if you had just seen this on the shelf like this or like this, you'd say, oh, it's the retail release. You wouldn't know it was a promotion until you either opened it or saw the little thing on the back. Not so for the other two. Here is Classic Creatures Return of the Jedi. Classic Creatures Return of the Jedi, the rating in CBS Fox Video, just like the retail version. But notice, it's a different image. Probably a smart choice to change it, because this image at least is from Return of the Jedi. This is an image from The Empire Strikes Back. What? Although we do see this from time to time. We sometimes do see that used as a promotion for this, and even some Return of the Jedi stuff. But that was a promotional image, I believe, originally from The Empire Strikes Back. So we have that, and a similar design to the side, except swapping out the image up at the top. And then the back images, you find, are the same. The difference being, of course, that just like the other one, this has the promotion only slathered across the bottom part. And then as far as the actual cassette goes, as with Making of Star Wars, no label here, side label, laid out the same way, except this one is referred to as Classic Creatures. Not Classic Creatures Return of the Jedi, just Classic Creatures. Then finally we have one more, and I gotta say, I think I actually like the way that this one looks as a screener better than the way that it looks at retail. Again, that's retail. There's your retail image there, which is all right. But then here's the screener copy. From Star Wars Jedi, The Making of a Saga, rating, CBS Fox Video, but notice instead it's using that promotional image, that poster image for Return of the Jedi, which is just very dynamic. When you're thinking about the saga, lightsaber blade up in the air, that's pretty cool. Whereas this is just like, Making of a Saga. Here, have a random picture of characters that you can't see the faces of the actors from Jedi. Enjoy. And neither of them's a terrible cover or anything like that. I just think this is a much more cool-looking cover. Of course, swapped out there as well. Right? And then same back again. Put these side by side here for you. Same back again. Boy, that's some serious discoloration. But same back here again with the promotional only. And unsurprisingly, I would say, same setup here. Really, the big question is just what are they going to call it? Because they abbreviated Classic Creatures. Here we go. It is just called From Star Wars to Jedi, which is what a lot of folks refer to it these days as. It's From Star Wars to Jedi, The Making of a Saga. Sometimes you'll see some people refer to it as The Making of a Saga, but that can get confused with Making of Star Wars. So From Star Wars to Jedi, you tend to see that. For some reason, I tend to say the whole name almost every single time. Probably because that's how I used to label my old VHS tape when I recorded it from a television. My first and repeated experiences with From Star Wars to Jedi were on a cassette that we had recorded Empire and Jedi off of television, plus From Star Wars to Jedi, The Making of a Saga. Just like my first experiences over and over again with Ewoks was Battle for Endor taped from television, and sort of Caravan of Courage taped from television, but it was like missing parts or something. So I really didn't see the full Caravan of Courage, at least in any way that I could remember, until like post-1990 when I finally got my hands on an actual VHS cassette of it. But yeah, so kind of an interesting thing here. So we have, for Ewoks The Battle for Endor, to go along with that retail release, we have that screener with the promo stickers I just stuck back inside here. And to go with all of our retail releases of behind-the-scenes stuff, we have the promotion-only version of all three, but whereas A New Hope keeps the same case, we have different cover images for the screener and retail releases of classic creatures, and then the same thing for Making of a Saga. Screener, retail. And I know I keep switching hands, it's just the way they're sitting on my desk. So yeah, so really kind of cool stuff, and like I said, a lot of times these promotional videos would wind up, if they weren't sent back, which again, a lot of them they just didn't care, they usually wound up just being trashed eventually. You'll still sometimes see these in collections, but they're actually relatively hard to come by. I would say actually that these are probably harder to come by now than a more recent screener, like a DVD screener, say, of Rise of Skywalker or something, which pop up on eBay pretty often at this point. Yeah, kind of a cool little thing here. I do want to thank Sarah and David for helping me get my hands on these. Her for selling them, him for acting as a middleman to get these. They would definitely have a fun place in my collection with some other screeners. And really neat to see that there is some changing going on between screener and retail releases, which means there must have been at least a little bit of a time gap to give businesses a chance to choose whether to order these to carry in the stores and for them to finalize the covers for production. So pretty neat stuff there. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the home video viewers.